Hello everyone, my name is Max, and today I'd like to share my experience dealing with the first tantrum my child had and how I handled it. Parenthood is full of unexpected moments, but nothing quite prepares you for the emotional roller coaster of seeing your child experience their first emotional meltdown. I had heard a lot about tantrums before becoming a parent. Friends, family, even strangers on the internet had shared their stories. However, nothing could have fully prepared me for that moment when I found myself face to face with my child's first true meltdown. At the time, I felt overwhelmed and unsure of what to do. I had no idea whether I should comfort my child, try to discipline them, or simply wait it out. I was struggling with my own emotions as well, trying to remain calm and composed while my child was visibly upset. It was a confusing time, and I know I'm not alone in this feeling. So here I am, looking back at that moment with some distance, reflecting on what happened, how I handled it, and the lessons I learned along the way. In this post, I'll walk you through my experience, analyze what went right and wrong, and share some practical tips that helped me get through it. I hope this helps anyone going through similar situations or who may find themselves in the midst of a toddler's first tantrum. Parenting can be tough, but it's also one of the most rewarding journeys. Let's dive in. It all started on a typical Sunday afternoon. My partner and I had decided to take our 2-year-old to the local park for some fresh air. Our child, Lucas, was usually a cheerful little guy, always running around and exploring the world with wide-eyed curiosity. But this time, everything changed in an instant. We arrived at the park, and as usual, Lucas wanted to go straight to the swings. We approached the play area, and as we walked past the slides, Lucas noticed something that caught his attention: a new, brightly colored toy truck sitting by the sand pit. He immediately started pointing at it, his voice rising with excitement. He clearly wanted to play with it. But there was one problem. Another child was already playing with it. I tried to calmly explain to Lucas that the toy was being used by someone else and that he could play with it after they were done. At first, he was a little disappointed, but I thought nothing of it. That is, until it happened, the first full-blown tantrum. Suddenly, his face contorted, and before I could even react, he collapsed onto the ground, screaming, kicking his legs and flailing his arms. It was as if a switch had flipped, and my once calm and curious child had turned into a ball of pure emotion. People around us started to glance over, and I could feel my heart racing. The embarrassment began to creep in, but I quickly pushed it aside. My priority was Lucas. I knelt down next to him and tried to comfort him, but the more I did, the worse it seemed to get. He refused to be consoled, screaming louder, and now even hitting the ground in frustration. I could hear other parents talking quietly to each other, some giving sympathetic looks, while others seemed to be judging. I could feel the pressure mounting, and honestly, I had no idea what to do next. I tried offering him a different toy to distract him. "Hey, Lucas, look at this cool ball," I said, waving it in front of him. But he was having none of it. He didn't want the ball. He wanted the truck, and nothing I could offer would change that. In that moment, I felt helpless. My mind was racing with thoughts. Should I have been more strict? Should I have just ignored it and waited for the tantrum to pass? I couldn't tell if I was doing the right thing. At one point, I even considered picking him up and walking away from the park, but I wasn't sure if that would just reinforce the tantrum as a way of getting what he wanted. After what felt like an eternity, I finally just sat down on the ground beside him, letting him cry it out while I stayed calm. I kept my voice steady, occasionally reassuring him with soft words like, "I know you're upset, buddy, but we can't always get what we want right away." Eventually, the tantrum began to subside. His cries became softer, and his body stopped wriggling. I picked him up, and he rested his head against my chest, still sniffling. I could feel my own emotions settling too, but it wasn't easy. The exhaustion and frustration were palpable, but I knew that this was just part of growing up and part of being a parent. When we left the park, Lucas was calm again, and we were able to enjoy the rest of the day together. But looking back, I realized that handling his first tantrum wasn't about avoiding the meltdown or fixing the situation immediately. It was about managing my own emotions and finding the right balance between discipline and empathy. It was a hard lesson, but one that I know will help me navigate future tantrums with a bit more patience and understanding. Looking back on the situation, I realized there were several layers to what happened, both in terms of Lucas's behavior and my own emotional reaction. Understanding these layers is essential because it helps make sense of the experience and also informs how I'll handle similar situations in the future. First, it's important to recognize that tantrums, especially in toddlers, are a completely normal part of their development. At Lucas's age, he was still learning how to express himself verbally, and his emotional regulation skills were not fully developed. He couldn't understand the concept of waiting or sharing, which is why he became fixated on the toy truck. In his world, the truck was something he wanted right now, and that need was immediate and overwhelming. From Lucas's perspective, the tantrum was likely an expression of frustration, not just about the truck, but about his lack of control over the situation. Children this age often struggle with their emotions because they don't yet have the tools to calm themselves down. What may seem like an overreaction to us as adults is, in fact, a very real and intense feeling for them. But my response, as much as I tried to stay calm, was a huge part of how the situation unfolded. The first thing that stands out is how I felt overwhelmed by the tantrum. I didn't know whether to be firm and stick to my guns or to give in and let him have the truck. There was this internal tug-of-war between wanting to teach him boundaries and my desire to avoid his distress. This internal conflict only heightened my anxiety and, as a result, affected how I responded. I wasn't as composed as I wanted to be. For example, when I tried to distract him with a different toy, I didn't fully understand why it wasn't working. He wasn't interested because his emotions were so tied to the truck. I was trying to fix the problem by offering a substitute, but Lucas was beyond rational thought at that moment. Instead of focusing on what he needed emotionally, which was some understanding and comfort, I was focused on offering a quick solution to make the situation go away. In hindsight, this was a mistake. Trying to outsmart or distract a toddler in the middle of an emotional meltdown doesn't always work, and I should have been more mindful of that. Another key element was my reaction to the bystanders at the park. I felt a sense of judgment from other parents, even though they probably weren't paying much attention to me at all. This feeling of being scrutinized made my own emotions more intense. It's a strange feeling as a parent, particularly when dealing with a toddler's tantrum. You know that others might judge you for your child's behavior, but you also feel vulnerable because you're just trying your best to handle the situation. But the truth is, most parents have experienced something similar, and those who haven't are likely just unaware of what it's really like. Still, I spent more time worrying about the outside perspective than I should have. In the future, I'll try to remind myself that the tantrum isn't about how others view me. It's about helping my child through an emotional moment and staying grounded in that process. Another important factor to consider is my parenting philosophy at that moment. I was focused on teaching Lucas lessons about sharing, patience, and control. But instead of doing that in a calm and methodical way, I was reacting to the situation with urgency. In those early moments, I didn't give enough space for Lucas to just feel his emotions. I was more concerned with fixing the situation than I was with letting it unfold naturally. Finally, one other aspect that was crucial in this situation was the emotional connection I had with Lucas. Despite feeling stressed and unsure of how to handle the meltdown, I stayed present. I didn't give up on him, and that was key in helping him eventually calm down. Even when he wasn't responding to my attempts to comfort him, I stayed by his side. I'm proud of that because it reinforced to him that I was there for him no matter what, even if I didn't have all the answers. Ultimately, analyzing the situation helps me see that I was doing my best with the tools and knowledge I had at the time. Parenting is a learning curve, and there is no perfect way to handle every situation. My ability to stay present and patient with Lucas was the key to getting through his first tantrum. It's something I'll build on as he grows and faces more challenges along the way. Having experienced my child's first tantrum, I've learned a lot about myself, my child, and the best ways to manage these overwhelming situations. While every tantrum is different and every child is unique, here are some tips and recommendations that I've found helpful in dealing with tantrums and emotional outbursts. 1. Stay calm and breathe. The most important thing to remember during a tantrum is to stay calm. This sounds simple enough, but it can be surprisingly difficult when your child is upset and you're feeling embarrassed or frustrated. I remember feeling my own heart racing during Lucas's tantrum, but taking deep breaths and pausing for a moment helped me regain control of the situation. It's essential to model calmness for your child because they are looking to you for emotional cues. If you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to take a step back and give yourself a moment to breathe. If possible, gently sit down next to your child without engaging too much in the situation. This helps de-escalate the intensity of the tantrum and gives both of you space to regain composure. 2. Acknowledge their feelings. One thing I learned quickly is that toddlers experience big feelings, and it's important to acknowledge those emotions. In the case of Lucas, his tantrum wasn't about the truck at all. It was about his frustration with not getting what he wanted. When a child is upset, they need to feel heard. Rather than trying to fix the situation or distract them right away, simply acknowledging their feelings can help them feel understood. For instance, I could have said something like, "I see you're really upset because you want the truck, and I understand that." It's hard when we can't have what we want right away. Saying something like this can help validate their feelings without giving in to their demands. It teaches them that their emotions are okay, even if their actions need to be addressed later. 3. Offer choices and control. Sometimes tantrums happen because children feel powerless in certain situations. Giving your child small choices can help them feel more in control. For example, instead of simply telling Lucas he couldn't have the truck, I could have offered him a choice. Do you want to play with the ball, or do you want to slide down the slide? Offering simple alternatives helps children feel like they have a say in what happens next. This can also apply to older toddlers who are learning to express their desires. Instead of saying, "No, you can't have that," you could try, "You can have this toy now," or "Wait a little bit for the truck." This approach not only helps reduce power struggles, but also encourages them to think about their options. 4. Pick your battles. Not every tantrum needs to be met with a firm response. Sometimes letting go of a small issue can save you from escalating the situation unnecessarily. If the tantrum is over something minor, like a toy or a snack, consider whether it's worth addressing immediately or if it's better to wait for the child to calm down before discussing it further. At other times, standing firm is necessary, especially if safety or boundaries are involved. But knowing when to let go of a small issue and when to hold the line is a key parenting skill. 5. Stay consistent with rules and boundaries. Children thrive on consistency. If you've set a boundary, it's important to stick to it even if they throw a tantrum. If Lucas was upset because he couldn't have the truck, sticking to the rule of "we wait our turn" helps him learn that tantrums won't change the situation. However, it's important to remain empathetic while being firm with boundaries. Reassure them that they can have a turn later, but that the current situation isn't changing just because they are upset. 6. Use distraction wisely. Distraction can be a helpful tool for redirecting a child's attention when they are upset. It's not always effective during the heat of a tantrum, but if done at the right moment, it can be useful. For instance, if Lucas had been a little calmer, I might have been able to suggest something else interesting to do, like heading to the swings or playing with a different toy. The key is to avoid forcing the distraction and to wait until the child is ready to engage with something else. However, I learned that forcing a distraction too early can make the tantrum worse, especially when emotions are running high. It's important to gauge your child's emotional state before attempting to distract them. 7. Be patient and understanding. Tantrums are a natural part of development, especially in young children who are still learning how to manage their emotions. Patience is key, both for your child and for yourself. When I was going through the experience with Lucas, I reminded myself that tantrums are not a reflection of my parenting. They are a reflection of my child's emotional development and learning process. Being patient and understanding allowed me to stay more present with Lucas and helped him feel secure in knowing that his emotions were safe with me. 8. Set up a calm-down routine. Some children find it hard to calm down after a tantrum, and it's helpful to have a routine that signals a calming process. This might be something like a quiet time with a favorite stuffed animal, a calm song, or some deep breathing exercises. Establishing a routine after a tantrum helps your child understand how to regain control over their emotions. These are some of the strategies that have worked for me, and I hope they can help others who find themselves in similar situations. Every tantrum is different, and not every strategy will work every time, but the key is consistency, patience, and understanding. Parents should never feel alone in these moments, and it's important to remember that we're all learning and growing alongside our children. To truly understand how these strategies work in action, let me share a few real-life examples from my own experiences. While every tantrum is different, these moments have helped me refine the techniques I mentioned earlier and see what works best when dealing with an emotional outburst. 1. Staying calm in the heat of the moment. One of the most memorable tantrums I dealt with happened during a grocery trip. Lucas had been behaving well for the most part, but as we passed the candy aisle, he spotted a bright, colorful packet of sweets. He immediately began pointing at it and shouting, "I want that!" When I told him no, he wasn't having it. He collapsed onto the floor and started kicking his legs, wailing loudly. In that moment, I remembered to stay calm. My instinct was to feel embarrassed. This was a busy store. But I took a deep breath and reminded myself that this was a normal developmental phase. Instead of immediately getting flustered or frustrated, I knelt down to Lucas's level and calmly said, "I see you really want the candy, but we're not getting it today. You can have a treat later when we get home." I avoided raising my voice or getting angry, which allowed me to avoid escalating the situation further. Instead, I focused on staying present and letting him know his feelings were acknowledged. After about 2 minutes of sobbing, Lucas stopped and started looking around the store. I gently encouraged him to help me pick out fruits and vegetables. He eventually calmed down, and we finished our shopping without any further issues. This experience taught me that staying calm and acknowledging his frustration is the best way to de-escalate a situation. It's not about giving in to the tantrum, but simply helping him navigate his emotions in a calm and safe way. 2. Offering choices to empower your child. Another time, Lucas had a meltdown over whether to go to the park or play at home. He had set his heart on the park, but after a long morning of errands, I was really hoping we could have a quiet afternoon at home. Instead of saying, "No, we're staying in today," I offered Lucas a choice. "We can go to the park and play for a little while, or we can stay at home and do some puzzles. What would you like to do?" He hesitated for a moment, clearly torn, but ultimately chose the park. Because he was given a choice, he felt like he had some control over the decision, and the meltdown was avoided entirely. This scenario showed me how powerful offering simple choices can be in helping children feel heard and empowered. Rather than feeling like they are being told what to do, they get to participate in the decision-making process, which can significantly reduce frustration. 3. Acknowledge feelings and wait for the storm to pass. There was a particularly tough tantrum that occurred when Lucas didn't want to leave the playground. We had been there for about an hour, and it was time to go home for lunch. Lucas wasn't ready to leave and immediately started crying, saying, "I don't want to go home." In this moment, I resisted the urge to forcefully remove him from the play area, which I initially considered. Instead, I knelt down, looked him in the eyes, and said, "I understand that you don't want to leave the park. I know it's fun here, but we need to go home now because it's lunchtime." I allowed him to cry for a few minutes and then offered him a small concession. "Would you like to carry the bag with the snacks on the way home?" This gave him something to focus on and helped him calm down as he took control of the situation in a small way. It was an example of how giving children the space to express their emotions, followed by a gentle nudge toward a solution, can make the transition smoother. Setting boundaries with firmness and compassion. One of the trickiest tantrums happened when Lucas wanted to climb on the couch, something we usually allow, but I had just cleaned the living room and didn't want him getting the couch dirty again. When I told him no, his response was immediate. He started screaming and throwing himself on the floor. At first, I felt my patience starting to wear thin, but I took a moment to pause. I calmly told him, "I understand that you want to climb on the couch, but it's not okay to do that right now because we just cleaned it. We'll do something else together instead." I remained firm in my boundary, but also acknowledged his frustration. We then moved on to another activity he enjoys, which helped him shift his focus. This moment reminded me that while it's crucial to set boundaries, it's equally important to do so with compassion and understanding. It wasn't about denying him fun. It was about explaining why the boundary was necessary and offering him an alternative. 5. Creating a calm-down routine. After a particularly intense tantrum a few weeks ago, I realized the need for a consistent calm-down routine. Lucas had been upset about something small, but it quickly spiraled into a meltdown. Instead of just waiting for him to calm down on his own, I decided to try a more structured approach. I introduced a calm-down corner in our home. We have a small, cozy space with a few soft pillows and some quiet toys. When Lucas starts getting upset, I suggest we take a break and go to the calm-down corner. I sit with him, we breathe deeply together, and I help him find something to focus on to help him calm down. Sometimes we'll just sit quietly for a minute or two, while other times we do deep breathing exercises. This routine has helped Lucas regulate his emotions faster, and I've noticed that he's starting to recognize when he's becoming upset and requests the calm-down corner himself. These practical examples have not only helped me manage tantrums in the moment, but have also strengthened my bond with Lucas. Each time we get through a challenging moment, I learn a little more about how to navigate these emotional storms, and Lucas learns how to better express and manage his feelings. These strategies are not perfect and don't always work every time, but the key is to be patient, stay consistent, and always show love and understanding no matter how big the tantrum gets. As I reflect on my experiences with Lucas's first tantrum and the many others that followed, I've come to realize that handling tantrums isn't just about controlling a difficult situation. It's about learning, growing, and evolving as a parent. Parenting can be challenging, especially in the heat of the moment when emotions run high. But each tantrum is an opportunity to strengthen my relationship with my child and to teach them valuable emotional regulation skills. In the beginning, I was overwhelmed by the intensity of Lucas's emotions. I had no idea how to handle them in a way that felt calm, constructive, and reassuring for both of us. But over time, I learned that tantrums are not something to be feared or avoided. They are part of my child's developmental journey. They are a reflection of their growing ability to express and understand their feelings. And perhaps most importantly, they are an opportunity for me to practice patience, empathy, and emotional maturity as a parent. What I've realized is that staying calm is key. The ability to breathe, pause, and remain composed in the face of a tantrum has become a valuable tool for me. I no longer feel the need to fix the situation immediately. Instead, I've learned to sit with the discomfort and offer my child the space he needs to work through his emotions. I am there to guide him, to show him that it's okay to feel upset, but also to gently redirect him when necessary. I've also learned that it's essential to acknowledge my child's feelings. Validating emotions is one of the most powerful things I can do as a parent. It shows Lucas that his emotions are real and important, even if we can't always act on them in the moment. By acknowledging his feelings, I help him develop emotional intelligence, which will serve him throughout his life. Of course, not every moment is going to be perfect. There will be more tantrums, more challenges, and more difficult moments. But I've come to embrace these as part of the process of growth. I know that every tantrum brings an opportunity for me to learn and to help Lucas learn how to manage his emotions in a healthy way. At the end of the day, I've realized that no one has all the answers when it comes to parenting. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up with love, patience, and understanding, even when things feel chaotic. As I continue this parenting journey, I'll keep refining my approach, learning from each experience, and remembering that tantrums, while difficult, are an inevitable and necessary part of childhood. For other parents who might be struggling with their own child's tantrums, my biggest piece of advice is this: take a deep breath, stay calm, and remember that you are not alone. We are all learning together. Every tantrum is a step toward a greater understanding of your child's emotional world and your role in helping them navigate it. Parenting isn't always easy, but moments like these remind me why it's worth it. Watching Lucas grow and develop, learning how to manage his big emotions, fills me with pride and gives me hope for the future. With each tantrum we face, we both become a little bit stronger.